Hi, welcome to the webinar today, where we'll be talking about how we can use email to eliminate project delays and rework. My name is Hugh Knipe, and I work with businesses to help them unify their project information. In the session today, we will cover the current project management landscape for architecture, engineering, and construction firms, and delve deeper into what the single source of truth actually is and why it is so important. We will explain how to reduce risk, delays, and rework by using technology, and how you can transform your project management with machine learning. So the technology landscape globally is changing at an ever-increasing speed. This is no different within the architecture, engineering, and construction industries, or the AEC industries. I'm sure you've noticed that in your own work, technology is continuing to rapidly evolve and drive the AEC to become safer, cheaper, and quicker. Today, there are numerous examples of how new technology is revolutionizing the AEC sector, for example, including the use of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and BIM. It's no surprise that with everything going on in the world right now, teams either working remotely or in a hybrid working environment, that it's becoming more and more difficult to access project information. AEC professionals like yourselves rely on strong, consistent communication. This might take the form of pitches, winning clients, and day-to-day communication with your colleagues. The days are gone, or at least limited, where you can turn around to the desk next to you and ask your colleague to help you find an email. What this means for a lot of people is that they don't have access to the information that they need, and they are left out of the communication loop. As you can imagine, this is a huge problem. With over 347 billion emails expected to be sent and received every day in 2023, email is the most used communication and collaboration tool across the world. But it's the one thing most people manage differently, creating huge risks for the future. One of these risks comes in the form of project rework. A recent study found that 80% of project professionals spend half of their time on rework, and poor communication costs $62 million every year on average. Rework doesn't just waste your time and money, but causes huge communication breakdowns within your own team, also with your senior executives and stakeholders. MailManager runs an annual survey called the State of AEC Project Management Research Report. This aims to discover the project management and collaboration challenges facing businesses globally in the AEC. The report explores how firms manage project information, where they store it, and how they go about retrieving data when facing legal disputes. Plus, it provides insight into how the industry has been affected by the global issues across the world, including the cost of living crisis, supply chain issues, and the latest building regulations. As you can see on screen, this year we surveyed over 550 AEC leaders from businesses around the world, with the majority of respondents coming from the United States and Canada. Our respondents work in varied roles in their organizations, such as CEOs, CFOs, and presidents. So let's jump into the main findings of the 2023 report. First, the majority of firms cannot easily access their project information. We found that only 10% of respondents were not concerned about the accessibility and visibility of their project information. So most see this as a big challenge. In fact, only 2% of respondents have never needed to retrieve emails from a past project. Secondly, over a quarter of organizations are at risk when staff leave the business. Our research has found that more firms are aware of the importance of filing emails as part of the offboarding processes when people leave the business than last year. In 2022, 44% of respondents indicated that employees were required to file all project-related emails into a central location. This year, that number has risen to 58%, which is great to see. But unfortunately, 28% still do not require emails to be filed, and so this information is lost. Third, we're seeing that disputes are continuing to rise year on year. In our 2021 report, 63% of respondents experienced some form of dispute in the business, and this year, that number has risen to a disturbing 91%. Project scope changes and payments continue to be the leading causes of these disputes. Considering the majority of project scope information resides in emails and formal documents, and firms cannot easily access this, it's hardly surprising that they are continuing to dig themselves into trouble. Finally, email is still the most used communication and collaboration tool in the industry. More than 4/5 of respondents report that most of their project correspondence is via email. Only 19% of respondents use email for less than half of their project correspondence. When asked about their business's reliance on email, 11% of people surveyed say that email is now business critical in their organization, with most people agreeing that reliance on email has increased in the last 12 months. For the purpose of our session today, we'll only be focusing on the disputes angle of the research. We will be emailing everyone a copy of the full research report in the next few days, and my colleague Nicola will hopefully post it in the chat now. So according to the World Bank, we are currently in the second year of sharply slowing economic growth, only overshadowed by the global recessions in 2009 and 2020. In the AEC, we're seeing trends where costs are on the rise, margins are tighter than ever, and there are large staff cutbacks. Even larger global firms have reported huge drop-offs in profit as their staff costs are increasing. And unfortunately, more firms are going into administration than ever. With so much uncertainty and so many people leaving businesses, there is a strong need for organizations to think about their information management. How can you be sure that when you're accessing all your documents and correspondence, you're seeing everything if staff are to leave the business in the future? Considering 28% of businesses do not have email filing as part of their offboarding processes, and 81% of firms use email for the majority of project correspondence, thousands of firms are at great risk of losing information. Even more concerning than this is the finding that 55% of those surveyed indicated that they do not have any email management systems in place. I'm sure everyone on the webinar today has heard or read that email is dead, but at least in our industry, these claims are inaccurate. In 2023, 88% of survey respondents indicated that their overall volume of email has increased in the last 12 months. This is a stark increase from the year before, and the contents of these emails are more important than ever, with 11% of people claiming it is now business critical. On top of this, almost 2/3 of AEC businesses regularly need to retrieve emails from past projects, so most people can relate to not always needing to refer to previous emails. However, only 1 to 2% never need to. Over the last 3 years of this research report, these numbers have remained consistent. For many firms, emails and keeping them well organized and accessible is not a consideration until things go wrong. And as we can see, they hold vital information that could mean the difference between winning and losing a dispute. Unfortunately, we're seeing that project costs are continuing to spiral, which has led to an increase in disputes within the AEC. Our research has found that only 9% of people surveyed have not experienced a dispute in the last 12 months. This is significantly lower than the previous 2 years of this research report, even beating pre-pandemic records. 63% of organizations reported experiencing a dispute in the business in 2021. This number rose to 78% last year and 91% in 2023. The top 2 causes were issues related to project scope changes and chasing payments. This follows similar trends that we have seen in the previous 2 years of the report. Unfortunately for the industry, issues relating to project scope are continuing to gain momentum. Why? It's because 85% of information relating to scope changes are stored in email and formal documents. To break this down further, 12% of project scope changes do not reside in the digital space at all. And shockingly, 11% of respondents highlighted that the only place that they are kept is in a project manager's head. In 2020, which was kind of pre-COVID, this was 6.2%, which shows an alarming increase of AEC firms not formally recording project scope changes in the past 3 years. With findings like these, it's hardly surprising that 90% of businesses are concerned about their project information not being readily accessible or available. In fact, a third of respondents indicated that they are very concerned by this. Understandably, organizations with an email management tool in place such as MailManager reported less overall concern with their information being visible by their teams compared to those without a tool in place. We are consistently seeing that failing to make emails visible and accessible to project teams can cause issues that result in a legal dispute. According to Arcadis's 2022 Global Construction Disputes Report, the global average value of disputes was $52.6 million US, with an average length of 15.4 months. Firms cannot afford to let information like email correspondence slip through the cracks. We've seen that this leaky bucket of emails negatively affecting AEC firms globally recently. Firms must be aware of their corporate history and be able to prove everything that has happened on a project, especially if stakes are so high. A recent disaster that has shaken the UK AEC industry was a huge fire at the Grenfell Tower in London, where sadly 72 people lost their lives. This was one of the UK's worst modern disasters. I know a lot of you on the call today are based in North America. So as a quick summary, the fire was caused by an electrical fault and spread quickly due to highly flammable cladding used in the building. In the inquiry, damning emails were uncovered indicating that certain parties were aware that the cladding materials used were unsafe. Given the nature of the industry you operate in, firms need to guarantee information visibility to ensure they are making the right decisions. In the best cases, poor information management costs firms money, but in the worst, it makes people unsafe. Given the size of the global disputes environment, the costs of mismanaging emails is immense, and it includes information being locked in individuals' inboxes, staff wasting time looking for the information they need to do their job, and if staff leave the business or go on holiday, they leave a range of important information trapped in their inbox. Without proper email management processes in place, businesses can ensure that proper email management processes in place, businesses can't ensure that all project information and correspondence is captured and accessible by entire project teams. This means they are at risk of reworking the project disputes that we've spoken about previously. However, if you do have a process in place, you'll have this information to hand right away, but also years down the line should a liability dispute arise. So this has just been a quick overview of our 2023 AEC report. As I mentioned earlier, we'll send out the full report in the next few days if you're interested to read it in more detail. So what does this mean for information management, and how can it help you avoid disputes going forward? Luckily for us, technology advancements are continuing to improve how we work. As I touched on earlier, architecture firms are increasingly using tech to boost efficiencies. VR and 3D printing means you can identify any errors before construction, for example. And BIM advancements mean that team members can all be on the same page. The use of BIM has seen several benefits in the AEC industry, including reducing waste, improving collaboration, enhancing productivity, creating time savings, and are overall increasing technology adoption. It's improving safety across the industry, and it provides deep insights into existing buildings as well. In fact, following the Champlain Towers collapse in Florida, the National Institute of Standards and Technology has utilized BIM and digital modeling to investigate why the building collapsed. And an international standard, ISO 19650, has been developed to set a standard of how building and civil engineering work should be organized and digitized, including when BIM is being used. So while all this new tech is making our lives easier and really boosting the industry, it is hardly surprising that it's harder than ever to access project information. And you can't really ensure that teams are following their information management processes. We have access to a massive amount of information, both inside and outside of our organizations. This sensitive and often confidential information is typically stored in documents and correspondence. And it can be quite inaccessible, stored in disparate applications by various departments or even different offices. Information is the lifeblood of all project work, but only if it's well organized, accessible, secure, and updated. And this is no easy task. But what's the solution? You need a single place where all your project and client information is stored, so you can see the complete picture of any given project you're working on. You need a single source of truth. This single source of truth, which is also known as the golden thread of information, is a concept based around bringing all information together, ensuring everyone in an organization has access to everything they need before making a decision. The term golden thread came about following the Grenfell tragedy here in the UK. It is a digital record of securely created, updated, and accessible information covering the entirety of a building's life cycle, including design, construction, and management. A single source of truth provides better working methods and encourages more transparent communication. This is helping organizations drive change faster without compromising quality, and ensures that all project and client teams have access to the correct information they need when they need it. Managing project information in one place is critical to avoiding disputes, and when done right, allows teams to use their time, resources, and knowledge to make the right decisions at the right time. You might be thinking, this sounds overwhelming, but tech is on our side. The two easiest ways to create a single source of truth are by removing manual processes of information sharing and increasing information visibility across the board. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that if your single source of truth is not fully complete, it's not really the truth. What we've seen in our research report is that while firms are stringent about how their documents and contracts are managed, email is the one thing everyone manages differently. Without the right tools and automation in place, project teams are left to their own devices. Some people will move emails into other Outlook folders, some save important information to their individual desktops, and others simply delete information if they don't see a need for it any longer. In all of these scenarios, that information is trapped in silos and inaccessible to the wider project team. Losing access to essential emails or not including them in your overall information strategy can prove detrimental to firms. When emails are managed correctly, everyone in an organization has access to the information they need to make the right decisions at the right time. It provides a much better way of working, encourages more transparent communications, and ensures that all team members have access to a single source of truth. Plus, it removes the responsibility of storing and managing data from one person or a single department. It's time to start avoiding these common email headaches. Having to question that this isn't what we agreed. Asking a client, when did you tell us this? And I'm admitting to a client that John has left the company, so you're having to come to this a bit cold. Chasing a colleague to ask them for XYZ before the meeting you're going into, or generally asking them to forward you that email. So AEC firms can all benefit from a single source of truth. Some of the benefits of centralized information are listed on the screen, and they include your data becoming more discoverable, eliminating human error through automated workflows, allows you to establish a version control. It reduces the amount of time you're wasting on searching and recreating that rework that we spoke about earlier. It increases the transparency and traceability of who did what on a project, and allows you to easily comply with regulatory and legal requirements. And that's where MailManager comes in. So who are we, and why are we talking to you all today? I'm sure everyone on this call has heard or even worked with Arup at one point. For those who haven't, Arup are a global consultancy firm who have worked on design and engineering projects including the Sydney Opera House, Queen's Ferry Crossing in Edinburgh, and more recently the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. Arup built MailManager around 20 years ago, the reason being that they had no control over how their staff managed their emails. Yes, there were processes in place. They tried public folders, project email addresses, and manually dragging and dropping emails onto the server. But all of these processes relied on the individual to remember to do it, and of course decide on what is and what isn't important, which, as you can imagine, didn't always happen. So two of the main issues that Arup had were that project teams didn't have up-to-date information on their projects, especially if they were new on a project or someone else had left. Another big issue was risk, as they had to retain data for up to 14 years after a project had finished in case of any claims or litigation. There was a chance that without MailManager they could have found the data, but it would have been extremely time-consuming to do so. So Arup wanted to find a system that would allow project teams to be able to find any email across the project within a few clicks. But they had to take away the time spent filing and, most importantly, the reliance on the end user. If users had to start dragging and dropping or tagging emails again, it just wouldn't work. They needed something they could turn on overnight that would start learning behaviors and would mean they wouldn't have to discuss email management again. They couldn't find anything that let them do that, so given the size of their IT team, they decided to write their own system. And it's now being used by a host of different AEC firms across the world. So here's a list of some of the larger clients that we have in the United States. And here's a similar list of those of our customers in Canada as well. So one of our longer term customers that you might have heard of is Ramboll. For those of you that don't know, Ramboll is an engineering consultancy firm with over 17,000 employees across 27 locations globally. Ramboll has strong representation across the world, but particularly in the Nordics, America, India, and the UK. So before MailManager was introduced to the business in 2009, Ramboll's project email management process was manual and very time-consuming. This was a fundamental challenge in regards to efficiency, consistency, and productivity for their projects. Whilst their global offices were not working on projects together as such, each project had numerous members, and they found that there was inconsistency in having access to all project emails. Either emails were not being filed centrally or simply were being locked in other people's inboxes. A particular project member realized that something had to be done, and the first step in doing this was to introduce a central way of filing and searching for emails. Ramboll was overwhelmed with important project information. They needed to implement an email management tool fast. As with other software procurement within the company, the individual project member went to the market to see what offerings were available. They then drew up a short list of potential solutions that would be able to help them. MailManager was a strong contender here. MailManager was vigorously tried and tested for a particular project. It was quickly identified as a tool that could introduce consistency across Ramboll, whilst also reducing risk the company was exposed to in regards to compliance. Shortly after identifying MailManager, a business case was built, highlighting its ease of implementation, affordability, and the potential benefits to the company. Both the procurement team and champion users agreed to proceed with the software. MailManager is now being used heavily across a number of Ramboll's global offices, including the UK, Sweden, America, and Australia. As the solution has developed over its 10 years at Ramboll, it has simply become a way of life at the company, and everyone is now filing their project emails both consistently and centrally. They have found having access to all important project correspondence in a central location invaluable, especially in recent years where compliance and GDPR have become pressing matters. Knowing there is 100% certainty that all project emails will be available is something they cannot live without. Finding such evidence before would have taken days or weeks of IT resource. And that's assuming they could have found it at all. But with the help of MailManager's powerful search, it now takes less than 2 seconds. MailManager is a tool that can quickly become enviable, especially when parts of a business who are not using MailManager see the benefits from it. This has happened within Ramboll, where they are now in the process of rolling the tool out across the whole business. We regularly speak to our customers about how email processes have benefited their business, and we tend to hear a few things that pop up regularly. For ProChem engineering, the key benefits of using MailManager are being able to quickly file and locate project emails, standardize email management across the business, and staff having confidence that all business critical information is accessible when they need it. Niche Engineering noted that MailManager means the firm has saved tens of thousands of dollars in storage costs by drastically reducing the data size of emails being filed to their central repository. As well as this, they have significantly reduced risk by improving their legal compliance now that project and client emails are filed centrally. For Brighter Green Engineering, better email management processes means that they have been able to retrieve critical agreements within seconds, as the software works seamlessly within Outlook. Staff are effortlessly able to file information, reducing overall stress and unifying all business communications in a central location. Plus, the firm are now able to search the entire history of a project in seconds. So all of these customer stories you've heard today tie back to the 4 key issues we hear from businesses we talk to that are ultimately the reason they want to purchase an email management solution like MailManager. They're concerned about the about the consequences even they may face if they were to lose any project information or correspondence. They or their team spend countless hours every week searching for information contained in emails, or they're wasting time on administration, the fact that they're having to manually file their emails. They're concerned that they lack control over the communication that is coming into and leaving the business. And finally, information is trapped in individuals' inboxes, making it effectively unusable. We give our customers confidence that any email that has been filed can be retrieved. Businesses can find any email in seconds. Your productivity will increase as you find and file any email in seconds. And finally, you'll have one central space for all your project information, helping you create and maintain a single source of truth. So what I'll do now, I'll come out of the presentation and share my screen. I'll give you a quick demonstration of what the tool looks like. So this is my inbox, and it should look very similar to how everybody else is set up today. What I'll quickly show you is an example of how you can quickly and easily find an email, and also how you'd file it away in the first place. So to file an email, the biggest change that users would see is that once you've read an email, a prompt will come up. So when we talked about previously having to rely on staff to remember to file or to think about where this email needs to be filed to, MailManager takes away that reliance by prompting staff to do their email filing and using AI in the background to make a prediction as to where this email needs to be filed to. So rather than having to drag and drop or do any admin really, it's now being reduced to one click to click file, and that email is now filed against that central repository, helping you create that single source of truth on your project. In terms of going back and now retrieving that email, the quickest and easiest way now to do your searching is through our MailManager search tool, which you access through the magnifying glass in the top ribbon, and it opens up a separate window for you to search through. So this is now searching through not just my own emails, but all the emails that I have access to across all our projects. At the top here, you can search on just one single project at a time. So if I go onto our Gensler project, there's now 2,500 emails here. On this, I potentially want to see anything regarding an invoice with an attachment, and I know that it was including my colleague Georgina, who's actually now left the business. By putting in those filters, I've now got down to 2 emails incredibly quickly. So this is where we're able to see that huge return on investment by reducing the amount of time and effort people are having to spend going through and searching for their emails. So as I said, it's only going to be a short demonstration today, so I'll stop sharing my screen and go back to the presentation. So we are proud to integrate with a number of our software providers that you can see on the screen today. And we're always looking to improve our customers' email experience. Regardless of where you want to file your emails and project correspondence to, integrating email into your project management helps to alleviate risk, helps you create better communication on your projects. It allows you to free up time for your project work. It helps you better deal with staff turnover. It allows you to reduce the disconnection between site teams and the office. And it also allows you to be proactive rather than reactive to issues. So I just want to thank everybody for their time today. Really great to have so many people attend. what we'll now do is go through some of the questions that I've seen have come through in the Q&A. So see the first one. How does autocorrect of spelling that you do not catch work for or against people on either side of the email content issues? It's a question from Jack around auto correction of spelling. So in terms of how that would affect MailManager, MailManager doesn't just base the predictions or on the AI on the content of the email. That is one of the factors, but it also bases off who's involved in the email. So that's how we can really accurately predict where the email needs to go to. So if autocorrect has kicked in and changed a project code to something else, MailManager will still be able to predict which folder that email would need to go into. So there's a question here around the Arcadis report and if we can share it. So it's kind of linked within our research report that we'll be emailing in the coming days. So the link to download the Arcadis report is included there, but if you wanted to look it up separately, it's called the 2022 Global Construction Disputes Report. Okay, great. Next question. When people leave the business, will we still have access to all emails they've received and sent? Yes. So when you file an email using MailManager, it will be sent to your central repository, and that can be your server, your SharePoint site, Procore, ProjectWise, wherever you're looking to store your emails to. So they will stay as part of your IT infrastructure once that user has left the business. A question here around what happens with sensitive emails, even e.g. kind of HR emails. So when you're filing an email to a central repository, the access of who can see that email is determined by the security protocols on your end. So if you have access to a SharePoint site, for example, you can file into that SharePoint site and you can search through it. If you don't have access to a certain SharePoint site, you can't see anything you shouldn't be able to see. So if I went back into my search, I couldn't show you anybody else within MailManager's HR details because I don't have access to that SharePoint site. So a question of where are emails filed through MailManager? So the idea is that emails will form part of the rest of your IT strategy for the business. So wherever you're filing emails as part of your project, that's where we look to store your emails. So whether that's an internal server, SharePoint, Ignite, Procore, ProjectWise, MailManager would look to kind of integrate with where you're saving the rest of the information. A question here about duplicate emails. So MailManager would automatically deduplicate emails. So that's one way. I think we mentioned in one of the niche engineering about how we help them reduce the size of their data requirements. It's because now using MailManager, only one copy of each email will be saved on your central location rather than potentially multiple copies of the same email in lots of different people's inboxes. How does MailManager manage permissions? As I mentioned previously, we would mirror the permissions of wherever you're filing into. So if you have access to a SharePoint site, for example, you can file and search for that SharePoint site. But if you don't have access, you can't see anything you shouldn't be able to see. And I think there's a question about whether we can share the slides, and yes, we can. So it looks like that's all the questions that have come through. I'll kind of wait another kind of 30 seconds just to check if any other come through or not. But if they don't, I really appreciate everyone's time today to come along and join. If people have any more questions or would like to kind of download the free trial, the link is on the page there. Otherwise, I really look forward to speaking to you again, or hopefully in the future. Great. Thank you very much.